So the first thing we're going to learn in section 5 is about list views. Now I'm going to create a new project straight away because it'd be much easier to show you what a list view is than to explain it to you. But essentially, a list view is one of those big tables that you can have on your phone, which will show you a large number of items of data, or occasionally a small number. But if you imagine scrolling through your contact list, for example, with all your numbers on your phone, then that will be a list view. So they're extremely powerful, very useful, and we'll use them in a number of our apps from now on. If you're coming from iOS development, they're known as tables in iOS, so it's exactly the same thing as a table. But one good bit of news compared to iOS development is that working with list views is much, much simpler than working with tables, in my opinion. So it's really easy to set up a list view and really easy to add your own content to it as well. So without further ado, let's get one going. So we'll go over to our design view on activity main, and then we've got list view demo already. We don't really want that text view this time, so I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'm going to scroll down in my palette here and drag in a list view. Here we go. So by default it will align itself, oh there we go, to the parent top, and you can see we've got all those demo items already. So that's just an example. If we ran the app, then we wouldn't actually see these demo items. We have to add those ourselves. But this is what appears in the design view so that we can at least get an idea of what our list view is going to look like. So that's absolutely fine. While that's just running so we can see our blank list view, I'm just going to add an ID to it. So the default is list view, which is pretty good. I'm just going to change that so it's at least something slightly custom, my list view. There we go. So if we just jump over and look at the emulator, you can see so far we've got nothing. We don't have those default items. We need to add them ourselves. All right, so let's get adding. So my list view is the name of our list view. So I'm going to add my code in the onCreate method. And I'm going to have a few tiny mini challenges here. So the first one is, can you create a variable called myListView which links to the list view that we've just created? Go for it. I hope you managed that. We're just going to create it with list view and then my list view. I should go back and just import that. So remember, Alt-Enter imports that automatically. And then we're going to get this from find view by ID, just like we normally do, and then r.id.mylistView. And that, of course, is going to be a view, but we want it to be a list view, so we need to cast it to a list view like that. Okay, so now we can refer to our list view using the variable myListView. The next mini challenge is to create an array list which contains the members of your immediate family, or some names of people that you like. It doesn't really matter, but go for 3 or 4 names of people in your array list. Go for it. All right, hope you managed that. I'm going to do it by creating an array list of strings like that, and I'm going to call it my family, and I'm just going to import that, and this is going to be a new array list of strings. And because we're initializing a new array list here, this is a method, which is why we've got the parentheses at the end there. So now I've created the array list, just need to add my content to it. So I'm going to do that using myFamily.add add, and then start with me. Kirsten. Tommy. And finally, Ralphie. There we go. So you might have done that very differently. You might have created the array list and added those all in one go, but I just wanted to show you that way. Right, so now for the clever stuff. We now want to put these items in our list view, so display them on our table essentially. And we can actually do that in 2 lines, believe it or not. And if you've done iOS development before, you'll know that creating a table in iOS takes a lot more than 2 lines. So I really like the way that it works in Android. What we're going to use is something called an array adapter. And what this essentially allows us to do is to convert our array list, which we already have, into a different format. In this case, we're going to convert it into a list view format, or at least a format that we can use to display content in our list view. We'll come across array adapters again later on in the course. We'll use them for all sorts of little things, but this is our main use of them, and it does make adding content to a list view really, really easy. So let's create our array adapter. And again, we're creating one with an array of strings. And let's just call it array adapter. And this is going to be a new array adapter with strings. And we need to give it 2 things to create our array adapter. We need to give it the array list that we're creating it from, so my family, and we need to give it the format that we want. And we also need to give it the context that we're creating it in. So context, as usual, is just this, so within this app. And then the new format that we're creating it in, we get from android.r.layout. And then you can see there's a bunch of different layouts that we can create. So a bunch of different types. So you can start to get an idea what you might use array adapters for just by looking at this list. We're going to just look at the basic one, which is simple list item 1. Feel free to play around and see what the other ones look like, but we'll just use the standard one here. And then finally, we give it the name of the array list that we want to create our array adapter from, and that of course is my family. So just to recap, what we've done there is we've created an array adapter called array adapter, which is a new array adapter of strings, and we've created it from the my family array list, and we've essentially converted that array list to a new style, which is the simple list item 1, which we're then going to be able to apply to our list view. And we do that in 1 line of code. So my list view dot set adapter, and the adapter of course is array adapter. And that's it. And I really love that way of doing things. I think it's a really intuitive and simple way of adding code to a table. So let's have a look. If we're lucky and we've done everything right, our app should appear just as it did before, but we'll actually have some content in our table which will be taken from this array. And there it is. Fantastic. Rob, Kirsten, Tommy, Ralphie. So that's how you add content to your list view. Super simple. The other thing I want to show you in this video is how to make your list views interactive. So at the moment we can tap on them and they do respond like that, but they obviously don't do anything. But we can fix that with just a few lines of code. So what we do is take our list view, so my list view, and we set on item click listener. So that creates a listener for a click on the list view that we can then work with. And for this, we're going to create a new on item click listener. There it is. And we've got some default code in there. Let me just sort out the indenting so that it looks a bit clearer. So it's an override. We're used to those hopefully now. There we go. Because of course some code is being run already when the items are clicked because this animation is taking place. So we're just adding our code to code that already exists. So let's take a quick look at the onItem click code that's been created for us. It's a little bit complicated. But first off, we've got our adapter view and then this question mark here. Essentially, this adapter view is, in our case, the list view that's been tapped. It's called an adapter view because it's not necessarily a list view. It could be a spinner or a grid view or any other kind of interactive user interface element. And that's what the question mark there represents. So it's an adapter view. We don't at this point know in our code what type of view it was, even though we actually know that it was a list view because that's the only type that's been created. But this here is what's known as a generic because we don't know what type of view it is. And then the name for that is parent. So just for an example, if for some crazy reason we wanted to make the table disappear whenever the user tapped on one of the items in it, we could use parent to represent the table and then set visibility, and then we use view.gone to represent disappeared. Sorry, that's view.gone in capitals. There we go. So essentially we can use parent in this code exactly the same as we would use my list view to represent the list view that's just been tapped. So that's what that first bit is there. The view variable here, which is a view, represents the thing that was actually tapped. So in this case, a row of our list view. So that's the row. The position integer is the number of the row that's been tapped. So it starts at 0 for the first row and then 1, 2, 3, etc. So we're actually going to use position to work out the name of the item in the array list that's been tapped. And then this ID, in our case, is actually going to be the same as position. But in some other cases, this ID would be different. So I'd recommend using position in our case. I'm not going to go into here the cases where you would use ID, but feel free to have a quick Google of that if you want to get a bit more information on it. But really at this stage, all we need is position. So very quick challenge then. Can you make it that the name of the person that was tapped appears in the logs as soon as it's tapped? Go for it. Nice and easy. Should have been. So log.i for information. And then I'll use person tapped to be the instructions. Alt enter to import the log framework. And then we just need my family and then get. And the item that we want to get is the one that was tapped on, which remember is this position variable there. So that's it. Let's just run that and see if that works. We should now have an interactive table that when we tap on it, it logs person tapped and then it gets the name of the person that was tapped. Here we go. So Rob and Kirsten there. I think I need to just scroll that up, but there we go. Person tapped Rob and Kirsten. Fabulous. Now list views are very important and the code that we've just introduced there is not necessarily straightforward. So I'm going to give you another challenge to get this really clear in your head. I want you to get rid of all the code that we've got here and your list view. There we go. And then I want you to start from scratch and add a new list view, which will contain the names of 4 friends this time, rather than family members. Then when you tap on them, I want you to create a toast. You remember that's a little message that appears at the bottom of the screen that says hello and then the name of the person that's been tapped on. So a little challenge there to remember how to do toasts as well. Feel free to have a Google if you can't remember how to do it, but best of luck. All right, I do hope you managed that. Let's get cracking straight away. I'm just going to drag that up. And then all I'm going to do is change the ID to friends list view. Lovely. That's all I need to do there. And now I'm back in the onCreate method of my main activity.java file. And let's start by getting our list view. So list view, and then I'll call it friends list view to match up with the ID. We're going to need to cast it as a list view, and we're going to get it using find view by ID, and then resources.id.friends_list_view. Okay, now let's create our list of friends. You may have thought that the way that we created the array list last time was not particularly neat. We had to create it and then add each value individually on a separate line. Unfortunately, in Java, there's no easy way to create an array list and import values to it straight away, like there is in a number of other languages. But I'm going to show you another way just for a little bit of variety. Essentially, this involves creating a list and then converting it into an array list. And remember, a list is like an array, but it's immutable, so you can't change it. So here we actually could use a list because we're not planning to change it, but I want to stick to using array lists because then we can use the same object type regardless of whether we're planning to change it or not. But the way I'm going to show you here is to take an array list of strings, just as before, and I'll call it my friends this time. And this is going to be a new array list. And I do like to specify, you don't have to specify the type, but I like to specify that it's strings. And then we're going to create that from a list. And we can do that using as list. And let's just import what we need there for as list. And this is then where we put our 4 friends. So I'm going to put John, Paul, George, and Ringo. There we go. So a bit of a mouthful there. And that's not as nice as a lot of other languages, but it is the simplest we can do. If you want to create an array list in one line, then essentially you need to create it in just the same way that we did before, but you create it from a list. And you use as list to create that from your individual values. All right, now we have our array list, so let's create our array adapter. So as before, going to create an array adapter of strings. I'll call it array adapter, and it's going to be a new array adapter, and exactly as before we use this for the context, and then android.r.layout.simple list item 1. So that's the type that we're creating here, and then we're creating it from my friends. So now we've got our array adapter. Let's attach it to friends list view. Just like that. There we go. And before we create our toast code, I just want to check and make sure that that's all working okay. I'm fairly convinced it is, but worth checking, I think. There we go. There's my lovely list of friends. Let's get rid of that. And now we need to create our onClick listener. So friends list view dot set on item click listener, and then new on item click listener. There we go. And there's our lovely default code. So all we need to do is add our toast code here. And I'm going to do that in one line. So toast dot make text. And we want the first of those two. And we also want to import toast framework. And then we're going to use get application context to get our context, just as we've done before. And now we want the text for our toast. So it's going to be hello. And then we want the name of the person that was tapped on. And we're going to get that from my friends. Sorry, dot get. And then position. And then we just want to decide how long it's going to appear. And I normally go for length long. And we want to show that toast. So there's a good quick recap of how you display toasts. But that's nothing new for us. We've done that a few times now. I hope your code looked more or less like this. With any luck, that will now display our table, and then we can tap on these. Hello, Paul. Hello, George. Fantastic. So you're now pretty comfortable, hopefully, with list views and how they work. In the next video, we're going to use that knowledge to create a mini times table testing app. See you there.